Some legends weren't made for the spotlight. They slipped through history in small numbers, built for the bold and forgotten by the crowd. Today, we uncover the rarest Plymouth muscle machines ever forged, hidden beasts, winged rebels, and Mopar ghosts that survived only by luck and legacy. The Plymouth Superbird felt like a machine that slipped through a crack in reality, built for speed so pure that it seemed almost too bold for the streets of America. Its long, tapered nose sliced the air like an arrow, while the tall rear wing stood over the body, like a lighthouse guiding racers through the storm. Beneath that dramatic skin sat the 426 Hemi, a cubic-inch cathedral of thunder that pushed the car to 60 miles per hour in just over 5 steady heartbeats, each one carrying the weight of NASCAR ambition. Drivers who wandered into showrooms often hesitated. The Superbird did not whisper its intentions. It shouted them through fiberglass and steel. The radical cone, the soaring wing, the low stance built for high-speed oval warfare made the car look wildly out of place beside quiet suburban driveways. Dealers watched them linger on lots, and Plymouth ended production after only 1,935 units, a fleeting moment sealed in time. Restored examples now climb past the 7-figure mark at major U.S. auctions, each sale confirming that the Superbird was never meant to blend in. It was meant to stand apart, to remind people that American muscle once chased the wind with unrestrained imagination. And if you enjoy journeys through forgotten muscle stories, feel free to stay with us and subscribe to American Muscle Soul for more machines that still echo with power. The Plymouth GTX Hemi carried itself with a quiet sort of authority, the kind that never begged for attention yet easily earned respect. Its design felt measured and confident, and beneath that understated presence lived one of the most feared engines ever placed in a Plymouth. The 426 Hemi delivered roughly 425 horsepower, sending the GTX towards 60 miles per hour in a swift surge and pushing quarter-mile runs into the high 13-second bracket. What set it apart was the balance between refinement and raw force. The suspension stayed simple, the steering honest, the brakes rooted in old-school muscle. But once the throttle opened, the car shifted from composed cruiser to thunderous sprinter. It felt like a velvet-wrapped hammer, civil until the exact moment it decided not to be. Rarity surrounds it like a quiet shadow. In 1970, just over 70 Hemi-powered GTX hardtops left the factory, each one carrying a value that collectors still chase with unwavering determination. Well-preserved survivors now sit firmly in the upper reaches of 6-figure territory, reminders of how fierce Plymouth engineering could be when given room to breathe. And if this car stirred a memory or sparked a story of your own, comment it below. Real encounters, family tales, or the first time you heard a Hemi roar, every piece adds to the history these machines still carry. The Plymouth Roadrunner Hemi carried the rough edge of a machine that never pretended to be polite. It came from an era when Plymouth stripped away every unnecessary flourish and left only the essentials of speed and sound. Under the hood waited the 426 Hemi, a heart that woke with a deep metallic growl and delivered roughly 425 horsepower. With a hard press of the throttle, the car surged towards 60 miles per hour in a short burst of raw force, its quarter-mile charge often landing in the low 14-second range. The experience behind the wheel felt unfiltered. The steering wandered like it was testing every groove in the pavement, and the suspension responded more like a stubborn companion than a refined partner. The Roadrunner did not glide. It lunged, shook, and roared its way forward, reminding anyone brave enough to hold the wheel that muscle cars once demanded a firm hand and an even firmer spirit. Its rarity grew quietly over the years. Only a small portion of buyers chose the Hemi option, and time thinned their numbers even further. Well-preserved survivors now stand as artifacts of a moment when performance was pursued with fierce simplicity. Their presence carries the scent of old racetracks, long summer nights, and the unapologetic thrill of American horsepower at full stride. Few muscle cars announced their intentions the way the Plymouth Cuda Hemi did, One glance at its broad shoulders and deep-set lines told you it was born from a wilder idea of performance. The body seemed to lean forward even at rest, as if the car always sensed the moment before motion. Beneath that tense silhouette waited the 426 Hemi, a power plant that delivered roughly 425 horsepower and pushed the Cuda to 60 miles per hour in a span of mere heartbeats. Quarter-mile runs often settled in the mid-13-second range, each pass marked by the familiar shudder of the shaker hood. Driving one meant accepting its temperament. The brakes required distance, the suspension spoke in firm, deliberate movements, and the engine never offered anything less than a deep, impatient growl. There was a raw honesty to it, a sense that every part of the machine was tuned for purpose rather than comfort. Once the road opened, the Cuda surged ahead with the confidence of something that understood exactly what it was built to do. Rarity gives it an almost mythical glow today. The cost of the Hemi pushed buyers away, leaving only a few hundred hardtop versions to carry the legacy forward from 1970. Surviving examples now command staggering figures, not simply because they are scarce, but because they capture the moment when Plymouth poured its most fearless engineering into a single, unforgettable creation. The Plymouth GTX 446 pack always felt like the kind of machine that spoke through the ground before it ever spoke through the exhaust. Its presence came from the steady confidence of deep displacement rather than sharp angles or wild stripes. Lift the performance hood, and the story sharpened. 3 Holley carburetors perched above a 440 cubic inch V8 stirred up close to 390 horsepower in 1970 trim. The result was a surge that built with the weight of a rising tide, carrying the car to 60 miles per hour in roughly 6 determined seconds, and letting it stretch toward 140 miles per hour when the highway opened wide enough. This GTX did not chase theatrics. It favored a long, deliberate stride, one powered by torque thick enough to be felt through the seat before the speedometer caught up. The chassis leaned toward straight-line comfort, and the steering spoke in calm tones even as the rear tires clawed for grip. It was the kind of car that rewarded patience, that asked its driver to listen to the rhythm of the engine rather than the chatter of the road. Rarity wrapped itself around the six-pack quietly. Production remained intentionally limited, leaving fewer than 100 hardtop versions to carry the badge into history. That small number turned surviving examples into prized artifacts of Plymouth's final great muscle years. And if you are still with us on this journey through forgotten Plymouth greatness, leave the number 5 in the comments so we know you are riding along with every rare machine we uncover. Among the great names of Plymouth performance, the Belvedere GTX held a kind of quiet authority. It was never the loudest figure in the room, yet there was something in its proportions, in the calm confidence of its lines, that suggested power waiting just beneath the surface. This was a car built on balance rather than bravado. It carried the manners of a road cruiser and the heart of a street warrior. When ordered with the formidable 426 Hemi, the GTX transformed into something far more serious. Roughly 425 horsepower pushed the car towards 60 miles per hour in the low 6-second range, while quarter-mile stretches settled into the middle 14-second territory. Paired with the familiar torque flight automatic, the big engine delivered its strength in long, steady waves, the kind that eased the car forward with purpose rather than chaos. Drivers often spoke of how composed it felt, how its weight seemed to settle the body rather than overwhelm it. Rarity hides in the details of what buyers chose. Thousands of GTX models rolled out over its lifespan, yet only a very small portion carried the Hemi or the coveted 6-barrel configuration. Those who selected these combinations unknowingly created the most treasured versions of the car, the ones collectors now watch for with the patience of hunters tracking something elusive. A well-preserved Belvedere GTX today carries not just mechanical value, but the echo of an era when strength and sophistication could live within the same sheet metal. The Plymouth Barracuda Hemi emerged as one of those rare machines where ambition outgrew the body that carried it. Once the 426 Hemi found its place beneath the long hood, the familiar fastback silhouette took on a new kind of tension, as if every panel strained to contain the force waiting inside. The broad rear glass and sloping roofline framed a shape that looked ready to leap forward even before the engine turned over. Roughly 425 horsepower poured through the drivetrain with a sharp, immediate urgency. Drivers felt the surge toward 60 miles per hour in only a few rapid breaths, the kind of acceleration that reminded them how lightly the narrow factory tires held onto the pavement. The TorqueFlite automatic worked constantly to tame the swell of power, though taming was never truly the point. This was a car that preferred to speak in raw bursts, not gentle suggestions. What set the Hemi-powered Barracuda apart was not only its character, but the rarity born from its price. Few buyers were willing to commit to such an extreme combination, and only a small number ever reached the streets. Time has polished that scarcity into legend. Surviving examples now stand as physical echoes of Plymouth's boldest engineering leap, each one embodying the moment when style, danger, and unfiltered horsepower met under a single roof. The Plymouth Prowler arrived as a machine that looked less like a product of its decade and more like a dream someone refused to let go of. Its long nose stretched out like a brushstroke pulled across the pavement, while the open front wheels gave it the stance of a hot rod that had slipped through time. The body, shaped from bonded aluminum, curved and tapered in a way few production cars ever dared to attempt. Under that dramatic shell worked a 3.5-liter V6 that produced just over 200 horsepower. It guided the Prowler to 60 miles per hour in roughly 7 measured seconds, moving with a smooth, deliberate rhythm rather than brute aggression. The automatic transmission kept the experience relaxed, even as the suspension let the driver feel each detail of the road. There was a playful defiance in the way the car handled, as if it cared more about being seen than being spec sheet perfect. What truly set the Prowler apart was the intention behind it. Plymouth built it not to dominate drag strips, but to prove that creativity still had a place in American automotive design. Production remained modest, and with the brand's final years approaching, the Prowler became one of its last bold statements. Today, surviving examples attract collectors who appreciate not only its rarity, but the way it captures a moment when imagination briefly outran practicality. The Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible stands among the rarest creations to ever wear a muscle car badge, a machine whose existence feels almost accidental. The soft top shape brought an unexpected elegance to a platform known for brute force, and that contrast became part of what makes the car unforgettable. Long doors, a low roofline, and subtle Barracuda details all framed a form that looked deceptively calm until the hood began to tremble with the heartbeat beneath it. The 426 Hemi turned that calm into thunder. With roughly 425 horsepower at the ready, the convertible rushed towards 60 miles per hour in fewer than 6 determined seconds. The heavy-duty TorqueFlite handled the surge with steady precision, while stout brakes worked hard to keep the power in check. The combination of open sky and unfiltered Hemi rumble created a sensation few cars of its era could match, a blend of beauty and danger that felt entirely its own. Rarity is where the legend becomes even deeper. Only a very small group of these Hemi-powered convertibles ever left the factory, each one sprayed in vivid high-impact colors that made them impossible to ignore. Decades later, the survivors have become sacred pieces of Mopar history, often reaching staggering sums at American auctions. Every remaining example carries the weight of knowing how close this model came to disappearing completely. The Plymouth Fury began its life as a bold expression of American confidence, stepping onto the automotive stage with sweeping lines shaped by the forward-look vision. Chrome, fins, and long horizontal strokes gave the car the presence of a ship carved for the open highway. Power in the early years came from a growing family of V8 engines that would climb toward the 350 cubic inch range, giving the Fury enough muscle to surprise drivers who mistook its elegance for softness. Behind the wheel, the car carried a sense of calm authority. Acceleration arrived with a smooth rise, the kind that pushed its weight forward without drama, yet revealed enough strength to keep pace with the performance demands of its time. The suspension leaned toward comfort, letting the Fury float across long stretches of road, while still holding enough composure to handle higher speeds when asked. It was a machine built for distance, one that blended style with capability in a way that mirrored the optimism of its era. Rarity today does not come from low production numbers but from survival. Millions of Furies rolled out over decades, yet only a very small share of the earliest high-performance versions remain in truly exceptional condition. Time, weather, and changing tastes thinned their ranks until the survivors became cherished, reminders of a moment when Plymouth fused ambition, artistry, and muscle into a single sweeping form. Each well-preserved Fury now stands as proof that rarity sometimes forms not from how few were built, but from how few endured. Every rare Plymouth we explored carries its own echo of power, design, and the fleeting moments that shaped American muscle history. These machines remind us how quickly legends can disappear and how precious the survivors have become. If this journey stirred old memories or sparked new curiosity, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to American Muscle Soul. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps us continue uncovering the machines time almost forgot.